So we just got the news that the U.S. stock market had its best week in 45 years? Really? Huh? To talk about that, plus a lot more, we have economic historian John Sneisen, who, of course, has been joining us on these shows on the Change the News channel. John, what do you make of 16 million unemployed? And again, these are just still the beginning numbers. These are still the rookie numbers. We still have the reporting of this 2 to 3 weeks late. We still have a lockdown that's going to be most likely probably even extended. The situation hasn't been getting better. It's been getting worse. You know, we're talking about the mortgage industry, the auto industry, the oil industry, all of it looks really bad, but somehow stocks are doing good. How do you explain that, and what are your projections for the future here?
Well, first of all, what happened was that they actually came in and they kind of priced in this whole thing into the economy. Not into the economy, into the stock market, because the stock market and the economy is not the same thing, unfortunately. And what's interesting is that you also have had throughout history where you see that, there was even an article that I saw just recently that this is what shares you should buy with your $1,200 check that you're going to get from the
government. Wait. Who's doing that? Because like me and Tim, we're like, no financial advice, but what we're doing, probably getting into gold, silver, crypto. That was my official position, if we even get it. Because again, another thing people are missing here, people are like, yeah, we're getting 1,200. That thing has so much bureaucratic crap in it that it's going to take a very long time for you to get your check. Some people are going to get the check all the way in September. And again, you have to even qualify for it. And the level of qualifications, they're too complex to even explain to you over this video. So I'm sorry, John, where did you invest in your stocks with that 1,200?
Yeah, this is the Motley Fool, they're called. Like, it's fool.com. They're basically like a stock picking company, right? And all they want is to keep the stock market up because they want the baby boomers to feel rich, and they also want to prop up the real estate markets. So that's the number two things that they focused on, the central banks, to try to make that happen with their policies, of course. And of course, that's what would have happened over the last couple of years. But now we're seeing struggles into markets, and also the real estate markets here in Canada, for example. Interest rates got cut by the central bank down to 0.25, but actually mortgage rates have gone up because the risk is too high. We got way too much debt. And I actually talked about that in my book, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, ? That I wrote back in 2015. And as it says, the subtitle is the facts you're not being told about your money and how to protect yourself from the coming crisis, which we're right in right now. So it's interesting how you're seeing, like, we're hitting peak debt, and they're really struggling around the world right now. There was an article earlier from Belgium that they're seeing the first time in 40 years that the real estate prices are dropping over Belgium. And then, of course, it's starting to happen everywhere, because when you lock down the economy like this, you think that we're going to have zero ramifications. And they believe that, oh, yeah, we got 60 million unemployed people in the United States. That's going to have zero impact on the economy. Actually, stock markets goes up. It just shows you that, these corporations are getting all this money in, and some of them have gotten the money that they've gotten bailed out was basically the money that they spent on share buybacks, so buying back their own shares to prop up their share prices in the first place, that we got to this mess where, we have $10 trillion in corporate debt that are slushing around and that are, failing. And of course, talking about that, the Federal Reserve has just launched 2 new programs that I had to really try to look all over the place to find. But they're called the, let me get the acronyms. I just love their acronyms. It's like PMCCF, and you also got the other one. Just one second, I'll pull it up. It's called CCF. And these are what's called secondary market corporate credit facility, and there's one that's called primary market corporate credit facility. So basically what they're doing, and I'm going to keep a very close eye on this in the next months or so, because what they're doing is they're using an entity that has been used by the United States for many decades. It was actually created by the confiscation of gold back in the 1930s during the Great Depression, where they took $2 billion that they confiscated in gold and then created what was called the Exchange Stabilization Fund. So they created that, and now they're using it actually to then bail out bad corporations directly by using it as a bank almost, and then creating these what's called special purpose vehicles, which is basically a corporation that they also use for derivatives. And who knows, maybe they're gonna create all these debt into that and then create derivatives, and then maybe the Federal Reserve itself or the Treasury is going to sell those derivatives to their citizens and then force them to invest in it. I'm just making a joke about it because it's so unreal and surreal what's happening right now. We believe that all this corporate, all this money that is getting, $6+ trillion, I think it's probably going to be closer to $8 trillion, coming into the economy. That's going to have a great effect on the economy. Who's going to pay for that in the first place? There's so many questions that needs to be asked about, these bailouts that we constantly have. And now they're bailing out the banks, they're bailing out the corporations, and nobody's asking one question because everybody's worried about the COVID-19 crisis.
Well, John, we still don't know the exact kind of bigger ramifications here. We got to understand here, during 2008, the Federal Reserve was secretly siphoning tons of money, trillions of dollars.
16.
$16 trillion to banks, not in the United States, but banks all over the world, not even based there. And I remember asking Ben Bernanke, how does it feel engineering one of the biggest robberies in human history? The son of a gun was trying to rip away my microphone to make sure that no one would hear this audio. I remember, I snuck into that place with all these banksters because I walked in with Paul Volcker. Paul Volcker, poor man at the time, didn't know. I'm not even going to get into that, but again, we got to understand.
I've seen it,
yeah. What is happening in 2000? What happened in 2008 is happening now, and the larger scale bailouts we don't even know about. I was talking to John. I was like, John, what's the number here? Is it 6 trillion? The amount of bailouts that everything's kind of happening behind the scenes.
Hundreds. I think it's going to be in the hundreds when we're all done, just in the U.S. probably.
Yeah, I wanted to refresh that conversation because you were telling me how you're kind of, coming to that number. What do you see? What are your kind of predictions? What do you think the total number is to the bailout? Because again, we don't know for sure, but what are some of the indicators that you're looking at?
Well, with the total numbers to the bailout, it's going to potentially be a lot of shadowy bailouts. Now there's $2.3 trillion come through the Exchange Stabilization Fund. There's actually some guys out there that believe that remember the $21 trillion that was hidden in the, was it Hudden Department of Justice or the Defense? I forgot which one it was, but they found $21 trillion in hidden, off balance sheet, basically transactions that they couldn't account for. So you're seeing that. And then, of course, the official currently number right now is that the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve has raised just at around $6.1 trillion right now on their balance sheet. So they're up almost a double of what they were. And my God, if you take a look at, this one versus the 2008 bailout, it's over double the size. And of course, I think it's going to probably be triple or quadruple the size very soon when things are all said and done here. And it's just ridiculous. It's a bailout that is happening because we had massive debt bubbles all across the world that were, simmering underneath the surface. I wrote a report back in October warning about the corporate debt debacle that was coming, and all the derivatives on top of that. They have about seven times higher amount of derivatives now that are based upon that corporate debt that they're basically bailing out right now. So nobody is, the Federal Reserve is just going to keep on bailing out their friends on Wall Street and the big corporations, of course, because they're just a money printing facility. It's funny how they're using the Treasury right now and the U.S. government. Nobody have heard about the Exchange Stabilization Fund. Really, I did a 1 hour in-depth actually look into the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is basically a slush fund that the U.S. is using to stabilize currencies to avert a currency crisis and the failure of the U.S. dollar. But then, of course, Trump went out and called China a currency manipulator. Meanwhile, the U.S. have had a currency manipulating fund that has been there since the 1930s, and they actually intervened so many times. And now, of course, they don't let that information out. So, like up to the 2000s, they intervened over 100 times into different currencies around the world to try to prop up. Because if you get the death of one currency around the world, it's very hard because people will see what is happening in that country and they'll be like, well, isn't it the same thing here as well? Is the US dollar the same as the Venezuelan bolivar? Aren't they based on the same principles? So people will see that and then, well, why are these guys not, wanting that currency anymore? So they're afraid of, that constant trust link that could be broken at any moment with, the currencies. And that's why that's their biggest fear right now, as that we get the massive, devaluation from all these debt defaults that are happening. You're going to have, people starting to really ask themselves, is the system sustainable? And, as they pour in mass amounts of money into the economy, are we going to, see the trust link just break and be like, hey, the US dollar, all this money that I'm getting, it's not even enough of what it costs now because there's so much inflation coming in the real economy. And then you're going to have, people stop using that currency. And then you're going to have a Venezuela event where it takes about a year or under a year for the currency to completely fail.
Yeah, or Zimbabwe effect. But right now,
Yeah.
Steve Mnuchin and the Federal Reserve, this is literally what they're doing. They're like, woo, yeah, F it. We're just going to give all the money to all of our friends. No one's even going to know about it. There's going to be no transparency at all. Then this is why, calls to audit the Federal Reserve by, U.S. Senator Rand Paul, Congressman Ron Paul before him are so important. So we can actually look at the balance sheet. So we can actually know what's going on. We can't even do that. My goodness.
Cash bar at the Fed.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's funny. I really like the movie called The Other Guys, and actually that talks about the whole debacle of the 2008 crisis. It's funny enough. I just love that saying that The Rock says, cash bar. That's exactly what it is for the banksters and for the corporations right now. Everybody is, getting bailed out left, right, and center, and it's good times for those corporations. But meanwhile, all the people, 60 million people, probably will be looking at the end of it. If this prolongs, so this is interesting. I just listened yesterday to Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, talking, and he actually said that, this whole lockdown thing will last to as long as we have a vaccine. So that's, the second type of right here is, we were just on the phone with Joby Weeks, and we're talking about, also, our rights and of course, your rights to your own body and what you can put into it comes with with that as well. And he's been, they're trying to force pharmaceuticals on him because, of course, Joby is very much into naturals and wanting to keep his body healthy. But of course, they are getting paid by the big pharmaceutical companies to peddle that onto the prison populations to kill them even more, right?
And, of course, that industry is doing well. And again, we gotta understand here. Look at China. China allegedly beat this and defeated this without a vaccine. So why are we putting so much effort into this vaccine? I mean, we got to raise some interesting questions here. Now, I remember just being kind of a novice when it comes to the economy and the stock market, but I really started looking into it when I started working with John and Tim Pashot. I think I said his name right. I hope so. He gets peculiar about that.
You must be pretty happy now.
Yeah, but looking, I'm going to make sure to mess it up just a little bit. But looking into the economy, looking into the stock market now, I'm like, I knew it was a scam before, but holy cow, it's a freaking scam now! To that extent? I mean, are you kidding me? That's my reaction to looking into studying the economic markets now.
Talking back to Job again, they're blaming him for, running a Ponzi scheme, which he just was a part of as, selling a contract. He wasn't even, the CEO of the company. But look at the Ponzi scheme in front of us. Yeah. It's ripping off, trillions upon trillions of people, all the people that are getting killed. We also talked about that from the economical, backlash that we're getting from this COVID-19 crisis. There's probably going to be way more people that get killed from, committing suicide,
Depression,
not having
cancers,
food on
and
their table.
stress-related
Yeah.
medical stuff. Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah,
Big time.
John, we got a lot more to talk about. We're going to continue talking about that, plus a lot more. We haven't decided what video this channel is going on, but wherever we decide to talk about this, stay tuned for more here either on We Are Change or Change the News.